Our AA birthdays are 2 days apart, Bobby. A few years, but 2 days on the month. Good evening, Bob, alcoholic. Sober through the grace of God in AA since the 10th of December, 1967. For that, I'm very grateful. It's really nice to be here. There are a lot of friends, a lot of special people, great talks, and there's ever since I first came here, and I don't know if the first time I was here was at St. Alfonso, but there was an experience of a kind of strength in AA that you don't experience everywhere. I have to get up at 3. We have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to fly to Chicago to give a chip, 50-year chip to Frank M. And they have a group, 500 people every Monday night. You know, you talk about COVID devastating something, you know, that's really had a major impact. They have to find a place to go. They have that same element. It's like big city, second, third generation immigrants, work ethic, no BS, straightforward, and you get that strength, strong families, strong marriages, good relationships. I got that every time I come here. I get that feeling, and it's a privilege to be in the presence of it. So thank you. We even got my wife to talk, who doesn't like talking, unless she's irritated with me. Then she'll talk. So I'm going to talk on stuff 6 and 7. God bless America. Okay. 6 and 7 are steps that you hear people who have been in AA longer talk more about than people who have been in AA that are relatively newer. They just are steps, like my wife said, she thought they were filler steps. You know, we needed 12, so they threw in 2 more in the middle. But it is, when you have finished trying to do the best job you can do on 4 and 5, when you've done an inventory, you know, it has a big impression on you. And you're, for the first time, you know, that those things I said the other day in my talk, that the 1, 2, and 3 are to give up, 4 and 5 are to own up, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are to clean up, and 10, 11, and 12 are to grow up. So I have just gone through 4 and 5 where I'm going to own up. And for a long time, I mean, it's really funny, those of us that have been hurricanes raging through people's lives, many of us feel like victims. We feel like it's been done to us. We feel like we've been, you know, had bad luck and, you know, all that sort of thing. But for the first time, all of a sudden, if we've done a good job with 4 and 5, we start to get a sense of we're not victims. We're a cause in our lives. The bad news is someone said, how responsible am I? And as the guy said, we usually start with 100%. And if it's any less than that, we'll let you know. But the good news is if we're 100% responsible, we have an answer. As was discussed a number of times in the room, if it's not 100%, then we're at the effect of other people. So right after we start to take responsibility and get a sense of the impact of the damage that we've done, they ask the question, are you entirely ready to have God remove your defects of character? Oh, hell yeah. Humbly ask him, sure. I mean, it's just the moment after the 4th and 5th step. Go home, take a look at it, read the step. I mean, it's a perfect logical following to 4 and 5. Except that almost all of us are not ready for that. Over a period of time, as you start to live the next 5 years after you've done your first, 4th, and 5th step, you start to wake up and realize that you still have quite a few issues, you know, that are going on in your life. And as you try to deal with them, we're not always very effective at dealing with them. And so I think an awful lot of us, if you wired us up to a lie detector, you know, would you say, do you really believe God's going to remove your defects of character? I think the answer for a lot of us is I'm not sure or no. I've been busting my britches. I go to 3 meetings a week. I'm sponsored. I sponsor people. I take the steps. No, I don't. I don't know what the hell else. I'm still struggling with those, 4 or 5 issues that are going on in my life. I don't know what the hell to do. I mean, I think I'm a reasonably good member of AA. I'm in the deal. I'm doing the work. And I don't know. It's tough. And I found myself in that situation. So I come in AA. I'm 23 years old. I had my last drink a week after my 24th birthday. I have the blessing to have the 12-step champion of the Uptown group of Alcoholics Anonymous be my sponsor. I got to be his wingman. He did more 12-step work than almost anybody else in that AA club, that AA group that I would. You wouldn't have him at your conference. He wasn't as eloquent, as some of us mouths try to be. But he was my big book. He was as solid as the day is long. His wife was Linda's sponsor, and for the 43 years he was my sponsor, never did we call the house and say, can we come over? Fighting, not fighting, with kids. Never. In 43 years. They had an AA house. They had a coffee pot on all the time. And Second World War vet, lost half his company in a bomb disposal unit in Italy. He was a mailman. And he was a powerful, ordinary, wonderful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I get sober. I get very active. Okay, I don't want to miss a thing. I'm stark raving sober. I'm at every activity I can think of when I'm going on. There is no other area of my life that is working. I have issues at work. My wife is a nurse. She's getting up at 6 in the morning. I'm sleeping in until 9. I'm lying about work. The biggest character defect in my life. For a number of years, I had trouble getting to work, I had trouble staying at work, and I had trouble working at work. Other than that, I was a pretty good worker. I know none of you have that issue, so it's a Minnesota thing. I had a gambling problem. More of a hobby, but 4 or 5 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. I'm making $3 to $5 grand a year. A year, playing backgammon, which was like my salary. In those days, my salary was $500 a month. If you can believe, today that's the salary. I'm an unhelpful husband. We start to have children. Linda's just doing 2 jobs, and I'm the hyper AA guy. And it isn't like, to only focus on the negative that I'm saying would be out of balance. It isn't like I didn't get better. It isn't like I didn't love my wife. It isn't like it was horrible. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't good. And when she talks about at 7 years, it's interesting because I always think it's 8. I should maybe change my tone. She has a much better memory than I have. We both had a meltdown. That was the time I went through and had my second surrender. If you're, I think almost everybody that comes in the program has a second surrender sometime between 5 and 12 years. There's a different type of business that you're carrying on in the first few years. The first 2 years of sobriety, it is astounding what people take on, the changes they make, and the breakthroughs they have. And then it's like we plateau out, and we've kind of lost the sense of this power that we're driving through. And it takes another period of time for us to kind of become with a divine dissatisfaction, which is what Father, having a senior moment, who's the priest from St. Louis, Father Dowling told Bill when he went up the steps, Bill said, will I ever get rid of this damn depression? And he said, I don't think so. I think it's your divine discomfort. He said, I think it's been given to you. I think the grace that has come through you because of it is astounding. So, I found myself at 7 or 8 years just at the end of my rope. Do you know anybody that doesn't know how to work? Okay, I've got a college degree. I'm married to this wonderful nurse that's working like mad, taking care of her family. And I'm this bozo that is lying about sales appointments. I'm lying about what I'm doing. I'm having somewhat the same mental experience that I had using. I'm gambling. 3 or 4 days a week. It's like a second job. I mean, I need the money. It is, how stupid is this? Would you need much more than a room temperature IQ to figure out that there's something drastically wrong with the structure? And finally, out of desperation, I went through the steps. I really didn't know what to do. I knew I had to find out what God had to do with Wednesday. But I'm not going to go to God with all 8 of the things that aren't working in my life. I got to get rid of 3 of them. I can't. I'll go with 5, but I can't go with 8. But I can't get the number any lower. So I finally figured, screw it. The only thing I knew how to do, other than put a gun on my mouth, which I thought about. I was so tired of being a loser. My mother always said, "You're not very bright, Bob. Dress well." And I have. She had a tongue like a razor blade. You never knew you were hit until your leg fell off. It was. So it is, and that seemed to be. I was, I looked pretty good when I went away to Notre Dame. I looked pretty good. I didn't finish. I walked out in the middle of my senior year in the yearbook. That's a story of my life. Really is in a very brief moment. And out of desperation, I started through the steps. Powerless and unmanageable, that was obvious. Now I'm lying to my sponsor, I think. I'm telling my sponsor 65% of what's going on. I know, here in Jersey you do 100%. Congratulations, that's wonderful. I'm only telling myself 65%. Life is lived forward, but it's understood backwards. You don't get it until you're through it. And I was as confused by my inadequacy and lack of demonstration as anybody else would have been if they knew all the facts that was going on. But I was hiding them. I did dress well. I looked like I was doing much better than I was. So I took step 1, 7 or 8 years sober, and it was as real to me as it was when I took step 1 when I first came in. When I first came in, I had a wall built around me. Said, "You like me, but you only like what I let you see about me. If you could say everything about me, you'd hate me." I hate me. Who knows more what a lousy, crummy, insufficient person I am than me? I'm walking around comparing my inside with your outside. The only way you come out doing that is second best. But at some moment, I started to tear the wall down. Come and get me. Help me not be who I am anymore. I can't stand it 5 more minutes. And for the first time in my life, I shared the whole deck of cards with someone. No one had the whole deck of cards, And I used to kill you with the piece you didn't have. You'd start talking to me, and I'd say, "I can see why you think that's that way, but I wouldn't tell you. But there's stuff about me that you don't know. There's stuff about me you don't see. Just thank you for your opinion and move on." I shared, to the best of my ability, the whole deck of cards. When those guys came out from intergroup and made a 12-step call at me, then I got my sponsor. I did I tore the wall down, and I made a discovery. The discovery was I'm not unique, but my personality may be unique, but not my illness, not my behavior, not my feelings, not my experience. And I started to have a sense of hope for the first time that would work for you could work for me. I never believed that because I thought I was doing the same thing everybody else was doing. I wasn't getting the same results. So now I'm taking step 1, not with my alcohol. I'm taking step 1 with my life. I'm in the mirror looking naked at me at 7.5 or 7 years of sobriety. And it's not a pretty picture. And I looked at step 2. What shocked me is I lost step 2. I believe step 1. Okay, I believe step 2 for you. I believe step 2 for us. I don't believe it for me. I'm 7.5 years sober. My pants are in fire. There's something wrong with me. There is something wrong. I got the words. I've done the steps. There's something wrong. And I got a little bit more active. I started to see people with bigger problems than I had, with smiles on their faces, walking through walls I was trying to avoid with dignity and grace, and I came to believe again that God would restore Bob to sanity. I took step 3 on my knees with my sponsor. We didn't do that in those days. This is my 3rd time through. But I started to hear Californians talk about doing that, and I figured I'm going to dot the I's, cross the T's, and I did that. A little awkward, but worked out fine. And then I started into my 4th step. As Linda told you, we did our 5th step with clergy. My first 2 5th steps were with priests. And I started to hear Californians talk about doing it with their sponsors. And I said, this time I'm going to do it with my sponsors. So I went to Warren. I said, I'd like to do my 5th step with you. And I said, I'm in trouble. I said, I feel like I'm dying of thirst lying next to a lake. I said, I know what to do. If I came to your house and you told me that you had the problems I have, I think I could half-ass tell you what to do. I just can't or won't do it. I am as sick and tired about can't or won't do it that I could just crap. I think I'm ready to do what you would recommend I do. And I did the best 4th step I think I have ever taken because of the pain. Because of my ego was beaten down because of the pain I was in. Now that's the value of pain. The value of pain is, and why it's the entry point for many of us for growth in our lives, is it suppresses the ego. When the ego I was as less protective in the process of taking that 4th and 5th step that I've ever been in my life. There was just no conditions, no barriers. I just did my 4th step. Went and did my 5th step. We cried and talked a little bit after the 5th step. He wanted me to go to a psychologist, which he said, you got a lot of problems around money, work, failure. My dad was a pretty successful guy, and he said, I want you to find someone who works with business people. I'm a mailman. I want you to go start that conversation. I want you to bring that conversation back to me, and I'll recapitulate it in terms of the program. God. That made me look odd, and nowadays lots of people get outside help. In those days, psychologists were 2 pages in the yellow pages. Now it's an industry, and a big industry, and I thought it made me look like I didn't have a good program. Hello. And so I said, yeah, I got a recommendation, called the guy up. He said, will you get your parents involved? I said, no. I guess he asked because I'm 23. That would not be a question people would ask you today. Will you get your wife involved? I thought, oh, crap. Well, when your wife's in the room, there's a lot of information that's extraneous to the process, and it's sometimes embarrassing. It really could even get in the way if you do that, but yeah, I'll get my wife. He wanted the kids involved. I thought, that's stupid. The kids were, they were really small. So we're going to this psychologist. I don't want to get too far into this. And I'm explaining to him that my company's probably going broke. I'm busting my ass 2-3 hours a day. And, see, I know you don't understand, so it's okay. And that I'm going to go broke. They're going to put my name in the paper, and, it's all going down the chute. And he looked at me and he said, why are you so afraid of failing? And I wanted to punch him, which is not my style. But I thought he punched me. I felt literally like he punched me in my solar plexus. I just, and I'm feeling about as bad as myself. I just said, look, you're a doctor. I said, you go broke. You just wait 6 months, walk down the hall, pound your sign on another door. Within a month, you're making $100,000. I said, I've lived in this town all my life. I'm in the real estate investment business. I said, I'm going to go broke. They're going to put my name in the paper. I'm going to lose everything I have. Nod your head up and down if you understand that. And he looked at my wife, and if you said, Bob lost everything he had, would he lose you? And my wife said, no. Asked the kids the same question. If you can't lose, you can't play. Now, I'm the guy. What I discovered in that man's office that day was fear. Now, you think a guy who was just got through taking his third, fourth, and fifth step would have. We weren't as good with the book in those days as we are today. So my fear inventory probably had to do with snake dogs and tall buildings. I did not have a sense. I'm afraid of being a father. I'm afraid of being a husband. I'm afraid of work. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of success. And it was like Chamberlain's two fish in the ocean. Isn't the ocean wonderful? What's the ocean? I am swimming in fear, and I don't know it. So my experience. So I find myself at 7 years of sobriety. Now that second surrender, I went home after that meeting with the psychologist, and sometime in that next week I had a breakthrough. I had a horrible day, went to work late, left early, got in a backgammon game, I won $500, I missed dinner, I missed the AA meeting, got in a fight with my wife, I slapped one of the kids. One of those days you'd like to have videotaped and sent to the General Service Office to show what 7 or 8 years can do for you. And you can laugh at this, but when you're going through it, it ain't funny. It ain't funny. If you really are in the game and you really like your life to be different, it ain't funny. And I said, gee, it happened again. I said, it happened again. Weren't you there? Yeah, but it's so habitual. I don't even have to think about it. It's just like it's an automatic. It's almost like I'm in a blackout. And all of a sudden I realized that was a bunch of BS. I sounded like a guy who wanted to quit gambling. I wanted to gamble whenever the hell I wanted to gamble, not have problems because of gambling. I wanted money without work. I wanted my wife and children's love and affection without spending adequate time with them. Not a very good design. And then I had this thought that I had tried as hard as I knew how to try, ineffectively, to clean my act up, and I had failed. And I don't know if I could have said those exact words to myself without looking in the mirror naked at my life, not just my alcoholism. And I got down on my knees, and I was allowed to take the 6th and the 7th step of the program of AA at a level that I'd not taken them before. 6 steps said we're entirely ready to have God, not Bob, remove our defects of character. 7 steps said we humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. I spent 8 years trying to do that. I don't have the power. It happens through me, not by me. I'm the pipe, not the well. And that night I took those steps. That night my life changed like it was on a lazy Susan. It was just a dramatic spiritual awakening. I gave the checkbook to my wife. She turned out to be a good money manager. Not all spouses are. My wife is. I started dating my wife every Friday night for the next 30-some years. I made appointments with my sponsor about going to work, staying at work, and working at work. I quit gambling that night. I spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours trying to learn how to be a better parent. I think being a parent takes 125% of whatever. It's like having a bowling alley installed in your head. It is. The directions are meager in the process. And my life took off like it was on a rocket ship. All of a sudden, the guy who the other thing I did is I hired someone to call me at 5:30 in the morning. No moderation. I'm getting up at 9 before, and now I've got someone calling me at 5:30. I go to 6 o'clock Mass during the week. After Mass, I go over to the side altar and I say, to God, give me your mind. I don't know what to do. Which is, again, BS. I know what to do. I'm just can't or not doing it. And I'll be damned. He gave me his mind. And I started to become effective. I was always smart. I just never was effective. It's a bad combination. What the hell is the use of being smart if you're not effective? What do you do? It's like a show-off game or something? So I'm a salesman who doesn't make sales calls. I don't take a chance that you're even going to drag me across the desk and force me to sell you something. So all of a sudden, I remember I'm in the elevator to go make a sales call to the vice president of General Mills. I'm just trying to sell him a $10,000 investment. If he buys it, our company gets $1,000. That's my salary for the month. I got to read the third step to get out of the car. I don't think this is going to work. I go up to there. He buys 2 units. So I make $2,000. I'm on the way down, and I have this thought, if a guy did this regularly, so most of us are using the program to deal with our alcoholism, drug dependency, and we come in and then we get this idea not only, it isn't just that maybe our drinking is a symptom, that the real problem is our thinking, and that maybe we need the principles that are involved in the steps in a program ourselves to straighten our lives out and to straighten our thinking out. And so we're starting to get involved in that process. For the first 2 or 3 years, most of us are so involved in the circumstances and the change that the circumstances need to make. The work we're doing is much more concrete. I mean, we really have a list. We really need to get a job. We really need to, deal with the IRS. We really need to, we've got, serious financial issues that we've got to do. There's just a whole, insurance and kids and all the sorts of things that we have on our plate when we come in. And along with that, we have some sense that we really need to straighten out our lives and straighten out who we are, and straighten out our thinking. But I think our focus during those first couple of years is much more concrete than a focus just on the principles of the 12 steps. We have to learn the vocabulary. We have to learn the relationship with our sponsors. There's just a hell of a lot going on. And then when we start to little by slowly, my sponsor used to think that, give me 2 years. He said, we lose almost no one after 2 years. He said, by 2 years, you've had some good things happen, you didn't get drunk, and you've had some bad things happen, you didn't get drunk. Give us 2 years. And I think that's fairly true all the way along. I really think that gives you enough time that you've incorporated yourself in the community of Alcoholics Anonymous and you're on your way. And I didn't have a real good sense of my defects of character. I was on a honeymoon for, I think, almost a year and a half. I just loved my gift, loved AA. But little by slowly, during the second year, I got handed the 6 or 7 ineffective aspects of my life. And I really tried to change, I don't know. I thought I really tried to change those things, and it was not happening. I think if I went to, I tell that kind of joke story about pretending I'm sponsoring a guy who's 40 years old, married with kids, divorced, and he's having trouble with the 4-step and the columns. And I say, look, don't worry about it. It's complicated. Just, I want you to call a group together in your house, get your mom and dad, get your brothers and sisters, get your ex-boss, get your ex-wife, get 2 guys from your group and bring your sponsor over and have a meeting, pass out tablets. I want you to say that we have a step in AA where we try to get in touch with our defects of character, and I'm having trouble identifying mine, and I wondered if you'd help. And then leave. Most of us wouldn't call that meeting. Okay. Why? We don't want to change. We sound like we want to change. But one of the things that most of us don't realize is how much of the disease is subconscious. Bill Wilson talked a lot about that and wrote about that. But your subconscious is like, one of the psychologists from Harvard talked about it, those problems that center in your subconscious is like riding an elephant, and that the way to gain health through that is learn how to train the elephant. And we're people that when the elephant wants to go left, we're going left. There's no issue about that. But your subconscious says, look, I know you're trying hard to change. How much time do you want? I'll give you 3 months. You want 3 months? You got 3 months. I'm coming for you after 3 months. And when the temptation comes from your subconscious, there's no preparation for it. It's painted on your eyeball. It isn't a series of thoughts. It isn't a series of didactic thinking that leads you into the position where you're in trouble. Sometimes it is. But when it comes from your subconscious, you're just presented with something. And if you don't really have your feet planted fairly solidly and get the hell out of the room and go to a movie or call your sponsor or do what you're supposed to do, you could be taken out in a New York minute. There is a lot of stuff going on subconsciously in this disease, and what we're dealing with is probably 50% of it. But there's a boatload of other stuff that is going on that needs to be healed spiritually. Spirit can conquer that. Intellect cannot. Okay? You just end up getting mind-bound. So it is, the other reason we wouldn't call the meeting is not only do we not want to change, we don't want to know. So you train your kids at what they can say to you and what they can't say to you. You train your boss, what he can say to you and what you train your sponsor. Sponsor knows when you're full of crap. He knows when you're in the game, not in the game. Okay? So you've trained everybody around you as to how they can talk to you and what they can say. And as sponsors, you have a sense of that. You have a sense of there's something in the way. This is not, exactly working. And my first 7 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, I tried to change and failed. Tried and failed, tried and failed, tried and failed. But I still grew. But there comes a time where you either change or you go. And at that point in time, if you don't change, you build an addition onto your house to accommodate the problems. Chasers hang out with the chasers, gamblers hang out with the gamblers. I'll make a deal with you. You don't call me on my crap, I won't call you on yours. Deal? We'll talk about the steps, the traditions, but you stay out of my face, I'll stay out of yours. Deal? Bad deal. Okay, the real players in Alcoholics Anonymous have the opposite deal. If you see me offline, grab me and nicely have a conversation with me that you're concerned about what you see. That's a good conversation. So it is, the reason we fight changing is that our mind is so identified with the activities of our life and our thinking. It is like we feel like we're going to die when we change some of these things. We feel like our identity is going to be so significantly lessened. And, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has talked about the 5 stages of death and dying: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. You go through the same process when you're making significant changes in your life. Denial, we don't think we have it, but it takes a while for someone to break through that eggshell of denial. Anger is, why the hell is this happening to me? Why are we having this? I don't like this conversation. I don't want to be in this conversation. Bargaining, God, please remove this, and I'll be better. I'll do what you want me to do. And then depression. And depression is due to having our noses pushed into the issue that's in front of us that we do not want to handle and don't know how to handle. And then Scott Peck says in his book, Further Along a Road Less Traveled, but if you allow depression to do its work, which is to grind the ego to dust, you go through depression into acceptance. Now, all of us in this room that have started our recovery have had that experience. We've had the denial, we've had the anger, we've had the bargaining, okay, and we've had the depression, God knows. And those of us that have been blessed to go through and have acceptance know that process. That's the same process that we go through when we have to deal with areas of our lives that we don't feel like we're sufficient to deal with. And I think more people find, so why did Bill write the 12 and 12? I don't know, the 12 and 12 was published in 52 or something, I think, 51, 52, 53. Same time the Little Red Book came out. And Bernard Smith's on Bill's back about, get the damn book out. I mean, the two guys from Minnesota are writing the Little Red Book, and they don't want, they'd like to have Bill have this, And so Bill writes in the prefix to that book that he sees people all over the country that are in depression and angry, that their experience of recovery and sobriety is not what you would necessarily want to see. He said, I'm writing this book to broaden and deepen your relationship with the steps. The first number of years when I came in AA, I came in late 67, most of the talks, if you went to conferences, were drunkalogs. They started with your first drink, they ended with your last. They spent the last 5 minutes talking about the kid's job and wife, if it was a male, or kid's wife and husband if it was a female. And they didn't go through the steps. They didn't talk much about recovery. It was like you had to be able to hear the music. And the music was in the transformation and story that the person conveyed. Today, I think you'd kind of feel like a lot of those talks are very old-fashioned, and we have gotten used to, And then there's been 3 generations of talks. We're an oral society, and Chamberlain almost single-handedly turned the battleship and brought us from the drunkalogue into a conversation that contained recovery and contained the steps. But Steve Stoll and Holly Martin and Max Cheater and, there was a whole bunch of people that were, started to get on that bandwagon, and little by slowly, and they called Chamberlain a water walker. He took a lot of crap for taking the position that he did in his life. And, but that changed, and all of a sudden people were talking about recovery in their lives. When the old-timers came in at 50 and 60 years old in the 40s, they didn't live to be 80. They died with 20 years of sobriety or 15 to 30 years of sobriety, and they were the oldest people around. The next generation were more the ones that had a little bit longer lives. And the third generation of the AA talk is problems in sobriety. That started about 20 years ago, or I don't know how long ago it started, but it was all of a sudden people were talking, because people are sitting out in the audience that have 15, 20 years of sobriety. They know the steps. They've been active in Alcoholics Anonymous. They've got issues and problems in their lives, and what they're asking is, now what? Now what? And that's the conversation after the renaissance of Joe and Charlie, when we started to get deeper into the book. And I think today, when people talk about, how do you feel about AA? Feel pretty good about AA. Well, aren't you worried about it? I said, no. I've got minor issues that I'd adjust if I thought, well, why not? I said, because there's no place else to go. There isn't. I mean, you can go to church and you can go to the Salvation Army. You can go to some places. You can go to psychiatric help. But by and large, there's no place else to go. You want to treat the whole disease? You want abstinence rather than medically assisted recovery? If you want that, you've got to have something that treats the mental, spiritual, physical aspects of the disease. I think the evidence says God gave that to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not trying to be arrogant when I say that we're not the sole owners of that. But in numbers, if you were trying to gather people to support the process of recovery, we got that. And I think we do an amazing job. I think we're doing a better job with the book. We're doing a better job with sponsorship. It is really attractive to see the changes and transformations that we see in Alcoholics Anonymous. Most of us are not surprised to see that change. I believe that, again, to go back in 6 and 7, I think that most of us, there's an awful lot of us that are dealing with problems, and we've had them a long time. Most of us don't have any major problem in our lives that's less than 5 years old. I mean, the real serious things that are going on in our lives, they're not weeks old, they're not days old, they're years old. And most of the time, we keep them out in the garage, lock the door. It only comes out about 3 days a month. Takes me over, uses me, puts me back, goes back in the garage. I lock it. People ask me how I am. Fine. And, until the next month. And 6 and 7 are where I think we go to the second or third level of the deepening of the steps. And I think once you've been through those first iterations and we're sober enough that our lives are starting to take on some stability, and we are active enough in Alcoholics Anonymous that we start to see the recovery in the people around us. I mean, it is astounding if we get, clarity of vision and just take a look around you, and we're seeing people whose lives were horrendous. you listen to Amy talk. I'm a little worried that you're borderline. Your case is so light that it worried us. Our daughter-in-law lived that experience and died in a tent of a meth overdose 2 years ago. The mother of her grandchildren, after 7 treatments. And so how do the major changes? We've gone through the circumstantial changes. We've made progress in our careers. We've made progress somewhat in our marriages. But there's a hell of a lot of sitting in this room that are having serious problems with their marriage, serious problems with health, kids. Life goes on. You get lifed. It is not, and it isn't a matter of doing anything wrong. It's just a matter of getting lifed, and we don't have any quick, easy. I think society tells you that if you really do this well, you're going to get it all together. Well, I got it all together once, and I stepped in it. You do not. There is no getting it all together. It never gets all together. That is not the nature of life. Life is pithy. Life is difficult. It is not the nature of life to get it all together. You may think that some people have it all controlled, and circumstantially some people are very blessed, and they seem to float above a lot of the problems that a lot of us struggle with. But there is no one who's exempt from life. So the deeper into the woods we go with our recovery, the more we need a spiritual answer. It's just psychology isn't deep enough. And psychology is like the religion of the world today. Psychology and yoga. It is, we don't, but I'm telling you, if you really want the peace and understanding and joy that the program offers us, we need something that has depth and weight to it. Not that yoga doesn't. I think certain aspects of yoga, are, especially meditation, is one of the best things any of us can do. I believe with the fiber of my body, the 6th and the 7th steps are primarily how we make changes. And in the earlier stages leading up to my getting deeply into 6 and 7, I have already started to become. And it talks about cooperation. It talks about doing our part. It doesn't happen on its own. You don't just go into a closet and pray and God comes down and changes all these things. We do need meetings. We do need sponsorship. We need those conversations. We need to take the steps. We need to cooperate with that. And once we start cooperating with it, we start to have contact. So deep down in the part of us that is original equipment manufacturing, that place that is untouched, unchanged, intact, it's God inside of us. At that point, we and God are one, not two. What you're looking for, Chamberlain used to talk about, you're looking with. What you're looking for, you're looking with God within you. I remember Chamberlain, we used to hog-tie Chamberlain, and we had him for the first 5 years at Gopher State Roundup. We'd go up to his room at 10 o'clock at night and talk till 2 in the morning. He looked down at me and he said, "Son, you already are everything you're ever going to be." He said, "I can tell you're disappointed with." I said, I don't understand it. But I think the grace and the power of Alcoholics Anonymous is that we are already everything we're ever going to be. And that the program and the steps clear away what's in the way and find what's already there. The process of finding God, as Eckhart Tolle talks about, it's a process of removal, not addition. Everything in the world tells you it's addition. More information, more education, more strength, more this, more that. It's removal. And in this process, the wisdom of our steps, the order of our steps, the strength of our steps, there isn't anything that I don't believe a person cannot accomplish if they put themselves into this process wholeheartedly. Do I believe they're going to have a spiritual awakening? Yes, I do, without question. And it is But, again, some of these problems that many of us in this room are dealing with, it starts to wear you down. The seriousness of it and the length of it and all those sorts of things, and you start to get less positive than you were when you were new, or you just, and we need a way of refreshing ourselves, I think, from time to time in the program, and to be able to get ourselves in front of the spirituality, in front of the strength, in front of, but it's a process of coming home. There's literally, when Chamberlain talks about it, there is nothing to do. It isn't about doing. It's an alteration in being. It is being. When you alter how you be, the doing automatically flows out of that. And that's what happened, when the big book talks about, just before step 4, I think, when it talks about first we get well spiritually, then we get well physically and mentally. I thought, God, that's backwards. Spirituality is the most sophisticated aspect of our recovery. That happens, you get first well physically, then, but I don't, I now believe what Bill said. Because here you've got a person that's been keeping people off their back for a hell of a long time, not listening to anything anybody's saying. And all of a sudden, they're going to meetings. All of a sudden, they're getting a sponsor. All of a sudden, they're reading the book. This change is enormous, and it is spiritual. The person's not even aware of it. Everybody in the group's aware of it. Everybody in the group knows that this person is different than they've been for the last 3 months or 6 months or whatever the hell coming in and out. Something's happened to that person. And that person is just, I just changed my mind, or he doesn't even understand it. But that's what happens to us in a process of spiritual change. We aren't aware of it because we're not looking with the right eyes. And it is, we have been sitting and looking at the world through our hole in the fence. And my hole in the fence was right below the cow's tail. Now, there's 1,000 holes in the fence to go look through. Okay, but I've got my chair set up. I've got my iced tea. This is the shortest, distance from the garage. Once in a while, the cow moves and you get a different sight, but most of the time not. And you all took me by the hand and brought me to a different hole, in a different chair, in a different place, and allowed me to start to see. In the 6th and the 7th step, I think as we're active in Alcoholics Anonymous, I think we get almost steeped like a tea bag. I think we start to, you hear people say that after you're in for a while, the steps start to do you. It isn't like you're doing the steps. The steps literally become part of the fabric of your life. I think we become part of the fabric of each other. It is a collective consciousness. It's almost as if when we're in meetings or with our sponsors that we, to some degree, check our minds at the door. We bring our intuitive mind in the room, but we leave our, some of the chit-chatter of the mind, outside. And little by slowly, we are granted something, and all of a sudden we have access more and more to our knower. You sit in a meeting and you hear someone say something, it's happened to me 2 or 3 times this weekend, that you've never heard before. And you just go, oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. You've never heard it. You did not know it was so. Every fiber of your body is saying, that's true. Who knows that? How do you know that? That's the knower that we have. That is, many of the great minds, many of the metaphysicists, when Chuck was a minister in the Science of the Mind Church, they talk about there's only one mind. The mind that you all have here is the mind of God. We're all sharing it. It's like eyes in a balloon. We start to have access to things that we have never known. We start to have the right ideas without the intention we start to find solutions and resolutions and things, practices to do intuitively, not didactically. And I think that is the mind of God. I think that is the sharing of the mind. It's not always at the snap of our fingers, but I think the longer we're in and the deeper we're in, that becomes available to us. And we have long stopped digging the hole. And we start to have, when you stop digging the hole, things start to get enormously better, and we really start to have access to that. So I believe that the influence we have on each other and the influence that the steps have in our lives bring us to a life that better than we've ever known, easier than we have ever known. And it is, where all of a sudden we have a knowing that was not available to us before. Whereas Marty was talking about, I'm thinking, that kind of mind-bound, experience that we have, that stops and something else comes in and takes its place. I don't think the travels that we're supposed to have in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous are supposed to be hard. We're not exempt from hardness. We're not exempt from problems. But I believe that if we, to the best of our ability, maintain our practice in Alcoholics Anonymous, we'll be blessed. And not problem-free, but we will be blessed. Thank you.